Hello and welcome to another episode of You Might Want to Sit Down for This Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Von Helvet. Today we have a special guest, a very good friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Fairweather, bass player for Gob and host of Stranger radio show, The Church of Steventology. Steve and I grew up together in Surrey, which for anyone who doesn't know is the suburbs of Vancouver. So on this episode, we go way back and talk about just being punk rock kids in the 90s and, you know, starting to go to shows and getting introduced to drugs and sort of meeting friends that are into mutual things and just where those choices and journeys took us. I'm not going to go on too much right now because it's a pretty long fucking episode because we're bros and we just kept chatting, man. There's lots of jokes, lots of little burns. I really think you're going to enjoy this episode. We get heavy, of course, at some point, always, as we do. Steve had got into some pretty heavy stuff with the drugs and ended up, getting clean and turned out to be a person who was out there working with other people who were addicts and helping them. And I'd say, that work saved his life. Punk rock, as cliche as might sound, saved his life. This is a rad dude. We'll be playing a little bit of music from the band Gob and hopefully not getting sued because I didn't really get permission to fucking do it. But hopefully, since they're bass players in the fucking podcast, they don't mind. I don't think the band will mind, but the labels, hey, I'm going to play a little bit of music for the dude in the band, on the podcast. Words working very well. It's Friday night. I just cracked my first fucking beer. Might have another one. I don't know. But I'm going to wrap this thing up. Enjoy this episode. Please, if you enjoy this podcast, like, follow, share, subscribe, and check us out. www.sitdownforthispodcast.com www.comedyhereoften.com. Thanks as always to the beautiful Alexi for producing the audio. Check us out on YouTube for an extended version of the interview. Enjoy this one with Stephen Fairweather. All right. Hey, I'm here with my good pal Steve Fairweather, bass player of Gob and host of Stranger Radio.
I just got an email. Can you hear that?
I did hear.
Okay, I'm going to close this email here. Sorry, buddy.
Way to fucking be prepared, bud. Read the email. Let's what does it say? Who's it from?
It's
Is it that Doorshack test you did? The results you were just telling me about?
I just went to, this is a bill I'm getting. I'll close this down. A bill I'm getting from my therapist.
Yes.
My first time going to this therapist, but I think she was fucking with me, kind of. She did those Rorschach tests. You know those Rorschach tests?
Yeah, Rorschach.
Like those inky blot pictures.
Yes.
But I think she was screwing with me because she kept just showing me pictures of my father's penis. 2, 3, 4.
Your dad's dick's that big.
It's so big he actually can't even text it to women. He has to use Dropbox.
And a fucking comedian too. This fucking guy here. How you doing, man?
Everybody's good to see you.
You too. It's a pleasure. I thank you for doing this again because this is actually the second time we've done this. And I was like, let's redo it because the first one.
The nudity,
Yeah. Well, you rather than just tell a joke about your dad's dick, like you were still so traumatized, you just cried the whole time.
I know.
Reliving that. So I was like, ugh, I don't know if this is a comedy podcast, not fucking
I try to make it artful.
Maury Povich. Relevant.
Yeah, you are his son. Oh, God. Why is it small?
Oh, shit. But yeah, I thank you because I hadn't, I was I was really, yeah, none of anything we just said would have been allowed on the last one because I was like, I'm going to market this to children. And I was like, meh. Chuck was like smoking a doobie the whole time during his, and there's swears. And I ran it by a few people, and they're like, no, you cannot. You have to be really careful. So I was like, all right.
Yeah, it's true. We even kind of talked about that on our. I like to say it's like a test run, like
It was too.
getting your
Yeah.
footing, and it's we even kind of talked about that. So are you because you have many like a shiny diamond that you are, you have many faces I think that you show to the people.
Yes.
One of course is going around the world and talking to youth about your story. You've written a book about it. I'll
Yeah.
put the link down here.
Thanks. So am I on your fucking show or are you on my show?
And but how you kind of your true kind of self is quite, and maybe why our friendship has lasted for so long and why we get along and we would like to see each other is because there's a quite a bit of a darkness to your humor and to your personality. And it's what makes us laugh, and it's kind of taboo, never with the intent of hurt or pain, but the intent of making someone laugh. So did you find yourself that you couldn't really shine that face of that diamond? Like, are you kind of hiding that from, because where
No.
how you kind of
I
are
just couldn't do both. I was trying to like, man, have my cake and eat it too, you know? And I was just like, I mean, I just had like Mark from Zeke, you know? Like I'm working on trying to get Murray from Daglow Abortions, like the singer from Cop Stabber. I would just, and because I don't, like if it was a focus thing, if I'm in a school, okay, I know who my audience is. Hey, this is kind of a rougher school, then whatever. Maybe I could drop an S bomb or even an F bomb. Some of these schools, but just because I'm throwing it out to the world, who knows? There could be like a five, grade five listening, or somebody very conservative. Who knows? So I just have to be very careful
Yeah.
not to offend. So what I'm going to actually do is once this thing gets rolling, pun intended, I'm going to do a just wiggle your toes one specifically aimed at youth. And some of these there will be crossover. This one so far will not be. Yes.
We can edit that out. We can edit it all out.
No, fuck that.
That's why there's a Patreon. You got to have that paywall up for the real R-rated.
No, man. I use.
Oh, it's cool. I think we played a show. My old band, By a Thread, that I know you remember.
Yeah.
I think we played a show with them in Chicago. I think at like a bowling alley. There was like this venue that was a bowling alley.
Oh, played a show with who? Sorry.
The guys from Zeke.
Oh no shit. Oh rad.
I think we were on tour with. We did a leg with the Black Halos, also a band that you know from Vancouver. Yeah. And we met up with them and did like a couple weeks with the Halos on like this North American tour we did. This is like in 2000. And I think we did a show with Zeke. I could be fucking making up, but I remember that I think it was them. I don't know. I get some bands mixed up, but it was the first time in Chicago, and I think it was a famous like punk rock venue. There was like a bowling alley, and also there was like a stage in it. I don't know. I could be fucking tripping.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know, but that'd be rad. They're a hell of a band to see live.
They were one of those bands that, like, a lot of the bands are part of their infamy kind of comes from their logos or their shirts.
Yes.
And I remember Zeke back 20 years ago, they had, I don't really, maybe this goes against my fucking point, but I don't really remember who was on it. But I remember Zeke was one of the bands that had a symbol that was kind of like, almost like a badge, like the Misfits or the Turbo Negro. Kind of badges.
Actually, all it was a black shirt, which is Zeke huge across here and just a massive pentagram. And that was like their shirt. And it was, I mean, fuck. It was obvious. Probably one of the first shirts I seen was just be like back then, like just pentagrams are on everything now, or unless it was like some black metal or something, right? But then,
that's what comes to my mind is that truly infamous blasphemy.
Yeah.
Also, Hometown Heroes. It's weird when you get to know people from around the world that are into like that kind of shit. How blasphemy was such a big deal to people in the 90s, and like a kind of a, I don't know, were they groundbreaking, but kind of a big deal.
I think so to people into that genre.
Yeah. And we would just see it like the dudes you wouldn't fuck with. Like there was an arcade I went to as a kid, and it was kind of when like Delta and Surrey merged. Like usually you fought dudes from other towns when you're like dumb fucking white kids in suburbia, and you wouldn't fuck with other people in other towns. and kind of how we met, we started fucking with your town, but how Delta and Surrey, the two suburban kids met was at this arcade. It was right on the border, literally on the border of the two towns with this was this dope ass arcade.
Yeah.
And there's dudes that would go there. They would have the blasphemy hoodie with the pentagram on the side with like an arch or whatever the fuck. It was like you just wouldn't even talk. If they were playing Street Fighter 2,
scary.
you wouldn't even talk to those dudes. And then that it also leads into my first show. I don't know if we talked about this before. And again, if we did, it doesn't matter because no one's going to see it. But my very first concert I ever saw was in my yard with my shitty little punk band I had when I was like 13. And two of the members from Blasphemy had a side project called Antichrist. And my drummer...
Christian rock?
With arms wide open. They came and they opened, but they played with us in my yard.
Yeah.
I remember it was like maybe 10 of my friends were there, and like my Nana was there.
Really?
Yeah. And she saw these dudes walk in from
Hell.
Blasphemy. She was like, "Oh, what's this, Steven?"
Yeah, I remember actually, I was probably in grade 8. I was hanging out with some pretty questionable people. I won't really name any names, but the one kid's mom, like, I got in so much trouble, like grade 8, grade 9. His mom was like the coke dealer in town, and he was just like the worst kid in town. And he was going to like Surrey courthouse on probation and got a ride with this guy who was either in Blasphemy or associated with Blasphemy. I had no business being in this man's vehicle. Like, this is the back of his vehicle. I'm sure many horror stories happened. And I remember just being in there, and there was fucking rounds of bullets and actual like grenades. And I was like, are these real grenades? Just sitting in the back, terrified. And then dude went into his probation meeting. I think we smoked a joint on the way there, and then like came out and just got a ride back to Cloverdale and carried on with their day. But
it makes sense. I mean, to anyone listening, if you're ever going to your probation meeting, you want to go extremely high in a car with grenades, and
yes,
because you don't know what's gonna. Jesus Christ!
Definitely in Surrey.
They just walk the talk, man. That's just, and as a kid, I mean, now it's just like you shake your head at it. But when you're like a kid and the world is still so little, again, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, you just maybe have a couple magazines and word of mouth of like punk rock and heavy metal legend kind of shit. That is just like, that's like the scariest.
I was terrified.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would be now. You get into a cab.
Yeah. I know enough now that I would know why I was terrified. But yeah.
Wow, I would just think it was like a fake flask. I would like pick it up thinking, oh, this is a fun looking flask. Is there schnapps in here?
If you saw the driver, you would have had your doubts that it wasn't an actual grenade. Yeah. Hey, but I remember I definitely want to. One of the things in the last one that kind of got me thinking is you shared the story of, it wasn't exactly when we first met, but it was kind of where we became bros, and I was like trying to like tiptoe around it, but it's such a fucking great story, and now we can do it true justice, I believe, because we met at the South Surrey or White Rock Work and Learn, it was called, which was the school for.
Well, did we meet there? Didn't
we met before that?
Yeah, we met because
we'd met a couple times, but we hadn't really hung out or anything.
No, you're where you came up was they had a youth center there, and it was the only place that would let that's the same shitty punk band that played with the Blasphemy dudes.
PBK, wasn't it?
Yeah, that time was called Half Mast, which I didn't know meant a semi-erection. But that
great punk rock band name.
That town, Cloverdale, another suburb on the other side of Surrey where I came from, is the only place that let our shitty fucking punk band play at the youth center. And we were stoked that someone would let us play shows. And like you guys, it was all like the skater kind of girls and guys were always so cool and nice, which was rare because then kind of where we were at, people weren't like openly just kind of nice just because you were like a kind of like looking like a skater kid. Yeah. You guys were so welcoming and cool. And that was so rad to us. So we kind of, I think, met then. And then when you showed up at the Work and Learn, which maybe people don't know, because is it called something? They don't call it Work and Learn?
They call it Learning Center now. They've changed the name. But I think I don't know if it's the same. I think you still do the same kind of thing where you do, like, it's essentially for nowadays it's more, I'd say, for kids with just, I guess even then it was kids who couldn't really function in a regular school setting, but it was also like for me, it was just, and I guess I couldn't, but I just couldn't because I was a fucking asshole, you know. But a lot of it now are kids with like anxiety or just issues at home and just different disadvantages.
Yeah, it was more, it was essentially a place where, because you
There's a
could,
lot of misfits.
yeah, in the school system there, if you kind of got kicked out of your school, you couldn't just get back in. You could not go back to your school. So the only real option if you wanted to get a GED was go to this thing called work learn. If you wanted to stay in school and try to get that grade 12, your only option was going to one of these. We call it work learn because you would work
We called it work
3.
and burn because it would smoke so much weed.
Yeah. Yeah, you were supposed to work half of the week at a job and then go, and the teachers were kind of more, a little bit more, they were used to dealing with like kind of fucked up kids or kids
Yeah,
with, personality disorders or learning disabilities or,
yeah,
yeah, just the people that you want on your ragtag crew in a movie of if you're doing a heist.
yeah, yeah. And it was more just learn at your own pace, right? But I mean, I remember the best thing about it was like, because I remember I think one of the first buddies to go there was like Kev Prout, and it was like he only goes to school for fucking like 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. Like here I am like an idiot going to real school for 5 days a week for like 7 hours or whatever the fuck it is. I want to go to work learn. What do I got to do? Get kicked out of this school? No problem. Principal, fuck you. Like off to work and learn I go. And then me and Lee Peters, it's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Lee. You
Right on.
fucking cunt.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, we both got turfed out of the Cloverdale one. I actually took the welcoming. There was like a pamphlet welcoming, I guess, students to the school, like a paper pamphlet. And I went in with whiteout, I believe, and a Sharpie, and just like changed all the teachers' names to just dirty. I just, yeah, just I don't know. I just made it super filthy. I just went through and fucked with this whole thing, like where it was like
Weird.
work and learn will change your life. I was like work and learn will ruin your life, like and just. And I remember one of the like substitute teachers saw it and thought it was the funniest thing. It's like, can I take that? Like, can I copy this and show my friends? I'm like 100%. The principal did not feel the same way, and I got booted out. And then Lee, I don't know what he did, but he wasn't far behind me. And then off we went to White Rock, where we saw this fucking vampire in leather named Steve,
Yeah.
just hanging out.
Their name.
Yeah, totally. when you when you hear Steve, you definitely think vampire,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Man, that school was such a pivotal part for so many reasons in my life. It was such a fucking, they should have called it fucking crossroads, because when I first went there, I too got kicked out and I came up as like a kind of punk rock kid like you. And then the years, because I had already been there, I think a couple years maybe.
You seemed more like you were more disciplined than we were. You actually did your work, and I think you said you had a good work placement too. Didn't you work at like a record store or something?
I was at a recording studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to this recording studio in New Westminster where the only way I could get hired to work there was this. And again, this is before the internet and shit. That guy was an obsessive conspiracy theory dude. The first one maybe I met, and he was obsessed with the killing of JFK and Freemasons, and it's all he wanted to talk to. Again, this is in the 90s, like mid
Yeah.
90s. And the way that he hired me was I had to go and watch the movie by Oliver Stone, JFK, to learn whatever the fuck. And
Yeah.
then after that, I could go there and hang out and work there and watch Law and Order while he worked on hit songs.
Get your credits.
But yeah,
I,
I've been there because that kind of point, because I was kind of like that punk rock kid, and I was always kind of fascinated with like, the kind of the darker side, when you first hear the Misfits, or you kind of hear that gothy kind of side of punk rock. I became super fascinated with that and so into that. And then the people that I met at that place, a couple girls, actually one was a bass player in one of those old punk rock bands I had when I was a kid named Mouse.
I remember
Her,
Mouse.
her and her friends were all kind of like these older girls that were going there too. And they kind of showed me, opened the door to like Bauhaus and like Dead Can Dance, Susie and the Banshees and like The Damned and open, because again, pre-internet, I didn't. There was no way for me to really learn that shit unless you get shown it.
Yeah.
And those group of ladies that kind of took me into their coven showed me that kind of side of music, and hearing all these new bands with like a darker take, but that same kind of punk energy was awesome. And I met them because I went there. And also it's kind of when I started getting introduced to different kind of drugs, because growing up you kind of just do the acid and the weed and like suburban kids do. And that's what kind of led me to start going down those, those dark corridors.
Yes. That's when you started exploring beyond the hallucinogens and the ganja. But let's
Yeah,
tell this story. Let's just for Lee's birthday. So
right.
we our school was like kind of tucked away at a major intersection in South Surrey near White Rock, 24th and I believe 152nd or King George, or either way, they're the same fucking thing. And there was a tent. No, there was a sporting goods store that had tents on display on like the lawn. Yeah, at the intersection. And the three of us, like me and Lee, just little punk rock fuckers and baggy pants and probably 10-foot pole and no effect shirts. And then a human vampire all in black leather with fucking pale as fuck with actual fangs inserted in his mouth. Legit fangs. Went into... It's like... Two punks and a vampire go into a tent at an intersection in Surrey, and
one vampire comes out.
Yes, yeah, three vampires. No, we just hotboxed the hell out of that. We smoked that. We had a clam bake in the tent.
Yeah,
and we're really really high. I had done like a raid of a house, and stole a bunch of weed, and it was like the most fucking potent weed I've ever smoked in my life. And I remember we were laughing so hard coming out of there, and then just this plume cloud of smoke that should have just followed you everywhere as in your vampire.
Yeah,
Like your entry to the wrestling ring. But it was weed.
Like a sad pig pen from Charlie Brown.
Yeah, but it's a fucking weed cloud. Yeah, and then all of a sudden just back to reality, like it's noon and it's a beautiful bluebird sunny day, and we're just kicking it on the corner, high of our minds. Well, it fucking looks like there's like a black ice fucking dispensary coming out of the or no, is black ice? Black ice is the one that smokes, right? Dry ice. Yeah, tent's full of dry ice.
My name was Black Ice back then, so it
was it?
No.
That sounds like a porn name. Were you doing vampire porn?
Yes.
Yeah, you're just skewering genitals with your fangs.
I mean, it's just a Tuesday in our world.
A Tuesday?
Yes.
Fuck. I'm gonna play the old one.
It's funny, man, because I was there for years trying to. I mean, it was such a crazy time for me because my kind of addiction started at that school and progressed through that school, and so it was a weird time of juggling, family stuff, relationship, addiction, trying to like get your GED. I was in bands at the time, kind of like gothy, electronic-y bands and shit. And then
what were some of the bands?
The first one, a shout out to our boy Eric Chalmers. When I was around 15, 16, I did a project with him called Corpus Christi. And it was just kind of like really,
I remember that.
Skinny Puppy influenced electronic-y music. And then through meeting the people that he worked with production and stuff, I met the guys from a band called Waiting for God. That was the band that kind of opened up being kind of like a quote unquote, like a professional musician, where you kind of go out. We did tours in America. I was 16 years old, in clubs with like, because we would always just play like youth centers and shit like that.
Yeah.
So actually play
or
clubs.
backyards.
Yeah, totally. So they were hugely influenced on me. And I was also just getting into that kind of music and stuff like that. So to be able to be a part of that and create that kind of shit, huge shout out to Eric. He was also the kind of dude when I was going to work learn for a long time. I wasn't living at home and I was kind of sleeping in the back of my car, and then still trying to go to school in the day. And Eric was the dude at that time, when his folks wouldn't let me crash over because they knew I'd like taken off. I was kind of like living on in my car or whatever in like this church parking lot by his house. And I was by his house because he was the friend that when once his mom and his dad would go to work, I could go to his house and shower and he'd give me some food and then I would go
Oh,
drive
that's
down
nice.
to White Rock to try to get my fucking my,
I
which I
know
never
I know where they live then, so I think I know the church you're talking about, man. That wasn't too far from where I live. That's crazy.
yeah. Yeah. So
And you know,
huge shout out to him, man. And we were to his
to
family.
Eric Chalmers.
Yeah. We're kind of turning the blind. His mom's kind of going through some health stuff right now. So huge love out to Joy Chalmers and to Eric for like saving my ass. A lot of Clover people save my ass, and then our mutual friend Nadine, who's married to a host on Stranger Radio, a station we got over here, Jimmy Heartburn Experience. Nadine and our mutual friend Jeff Agnew also were like lifesavers. The Cloverdale
I have a note here just to say it just says Agnew cunt. So I wanted to take a because I know Jeff listens to this. I apologize to any ladies who are offended by the C word. My mom listens, but Jeff Agnew is a cunt.
Yeah,
Carry on.
he was a lifesaver too. Yeah, and his sister, man, Nadine. So much love out to them too, because they were both at that time where you don't have a lot of places to kind of go to sleep and whatever. They were just unjudgmental, non-judgmental crew of a family over there, man. So yeah,
His
Clover
parents
Belt.
they're so cool, man. Like and Jeff's one of my best buddies. He just lives up the road now. Nadine used to live above me, and somehow we're still friends after she lived above me in a condo building for a year and a half. She wisely chose to leave. But yeah, they're lovely people, and those parents are cool. And I can see that. I can see them taking you in, and like they're so. The other day I was riding my bike, and Jeff's parents were Jeff Senior and Terry were hanging out in his backyard. I rolled right by, and they came out. I was wearing a shirt that said "fucking Slayer." I have a burning church like on my arm, and they were like on that. Like they definitely were. I'm sure at some point we're probably like, interesting outfit to wear riding through a park full of children, Kevin, but
Yeah.
did not let on. No judgment.
Yeah. They're good people, man. I mean, or they never even noticed. They and speaking of Nadine living above you, what went on to following you on Instagram? We'll put your Instagram name up on here. Following you on Instagram, there was a incident and a issue going on with you running for Strata president to try to fix some wrongs. What happened with that?
What happened is so I got pissed off. I've had an ongoing thing with Strata here. I was really loud when I moved in. I was definitely the jerk. And then, as you get older and just kind of, especially now, there's no one's coming over anyways. It's pandemic. So I've been a great neighbor. And then Steve, the Strata.
Vampire?
What's that?
Steve the vampire?
Steve another vampire, who's the Strata president and sort of like the building manager or whatever the hell. And I don't know, I got a warning that I had Christmas lights in a box on my patio, and it just set me off. I was like, fucking motherfuckers, like all right, you want to get petty? Let's get petty. So, put on some Tom Petty and then, to inspire me. And then I started making a flyer to put up around the bill. No, actually, first I wrote an email saying, shove it up your ass, in a lot more words than that. That was really offensive, funny, and I'd say articulate. And then it was just so good that I posted it to social media, and people loved it, because who hasn't lived under some sort of management strata like that and can relate to that kind of bullshit. So they were all for it. So I had encouragement behind me. So then the next day I started making flyers and putting them up around the building. And then they all got torn down. And then I made another round that I was running for Strata president. It just really was a pain in their ass for like a week. It was amazing. And it gave me something to do. I was having a blast.
Yeah.
And people fucking loved it. Like I was over at my dad's recently, and like his neighbors like, hey, you still running for president? How's that going? Like that. A lot of people were following it apparently. But I don't want to be the Strata president and have people calling me and crying and bitching and moaning because it's so pathetic. But it's awesome. So now they're pretty much kissing my ass. They're fixing my retaining walls. They're just like, I've made friends with so many people in the building who were like, yeah, fuck them. So I have all this backing. I have more friends than I've ever had. And then I appreciate this. The other day, my garage door opener just stopped working. And I called like the property management. I'm like, how do I? And I knew I was going to have to go through fucking Steve. And I've like I tormented Steve, the other Steve, the vampire. Like he always wore pants or always wore shorts. And I was like, you know, Steve always walking around in the winter in shorts, like just stupid shit. Never says hi. And then I was talking to like a neighbor the other day. He's like, he always says hi to me now. And I'm like, he also wears pants all the time now. Like I really fucked with this guy's head.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. Kind of to the point where I felt bad. And I was like, okay, I'm an asshole. I went way further than, hey, you've got some Christmas lights on your deck. Remove them, please. I did like a full week campaign of just making their fucking life a living hell. And yeah, I enjoyed every bit of it. But my garage door opener was broken, and I called the property management, like, because I was trying to get it fixed myself, and they're like, you got to go through your building. And I'm like, fuck, I know I have to go through. And sure enough, it was Steve. I had to like, and I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna, but I called the manager, and she's like, she just started laughing at me. And I'm sure she hates me too, but she can't say that because she has to be professional.
Yeah.
But she just was laughing, and I'm like, yeah. She's like, no, I shouldn't be laughing. I'm like, no, you should. This is poetic justice that like a month later, I actually have to ask Steve for a fucking favor and face him. Right. And he was really nice. I had about 5 beers before he came over, and then asked him if he teabagged the remote control or poured anthrax on it. And he was like, I would never do that. I'm like, clearly I would, but I'm a much more vengeful person than you, I guess, Steve. Yeah. And now I think we're cool. I gave him $20. I was like, here's $20. Buy yourself a pair of shorts, and you threw all yours away. I didn't say that. But yeah, that's where that went. Well, but when Nadine moved in above me, people were actually going up to her dad and brother and saying, hey, look out for that guy in the wheelchair. He's a real asshole. She's like, yeah, I know him, actually. He's a good family friend. So I had a bit of a reputation in here for being loud.
Kind of an asshole to move in to kind of realize you've been one. Because I think when I first moved into my place here, I think around 9 years ago, I think back now to having people over after the bar at like 3, 4 a.m. and they still have their shoes on. And now I'll hear someone walk around above me at like noon. And I'm like, oh, they're so loud. They're so annoying. But it's like, man, I was like a dick my first year because you don't really realize how thin walls are until someone else is being loud around you. Yeah. And you're like, oh, like if it's annoying, and it's the part of just not being a dick and, you know, growing up is just like, oh, totally. Like, that's so annoying to me. I was that annoying guy. So you gotta, you know, I even got like I get like soundproof, sound canceling headphones to listen to music or watch TV or do whatever with, just to not be a bother to. Because people around me, these walls are so thin. It's crazy how thin this shit is here.
That actually, your place looks pretty sweet, man. You're in New York, correct?
Yeah.
So that, I'm just guessing by like the brick and stuff that's probably an older building too, where they probably didn't really think about soundproofing as much, or.
Yeah, they built this building's from 1910.
Holy shit.
Which is crazy because if you think about it, people that lived here also went through a pandemic. You know, if your place is 100 years old or over, you're living in a place where people kind of went through something that we
2 world wars.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can kind of see in the brick above me the dark areas where, because there was no, of course, central heating, so everyone, your heat came from a little coal oven that you would have in your room, and that kind of dark part is where the coal oven would have been vented out to the outside.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
Did you put that window in, or are those?
Yeah. So another thing about my building is it's two buildings on one lot. So the building next to us is part of our strata. They call them co-ops here. Like 80% of Manhattan's co-ops.
Yeah.
So the other co-op building is like 20 feet across. So with that window open, you're looking right into someone's living room, which is adjacent to like my toilet. So when I'm
Yeah.
like sitting on the toilet, I can look over.
Masturbating.
Yeah, which got old after 3-4 years. It didn't really do what it needed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what can I have? I still want light to come in, but how can I kind of block out these other people's living from my living? So I
Yeah.
found that shit on eBay. It's like an old church window from some old church on eBay, and it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely fits the theme. And since for everyone who's listening and not looking, it's a cool place. Yeah, man. When did you move to New York again?
February, like Valentine's Day 2012. Yeah.
I am flossing my teeth during this interview. Um, and what took you out there anyway?
I would always kind of visit here. My bandmate in Gob, Tom, has been living here, I think, closer to 15, 16 years. So when I first kind of came here, I was on tour with that band By a Thread, in around 20 years ago. I just, as you probably know, there's some cities you go to and you just automatically, the vibe of it, the people in it, even the architecture just kind of hits you. You're like, oh, I can maybe like live here. In other spots, like, oh, this place is cool, but I could never really live here. New York always was like a place that just like hit me hard with the energy. I think it's because I have I have a bit of anxiety, and there's something about the busyness and then constant noise that kind of calms me
Hmm.
down.
Yeah.
When I'm in silence, if I'm like alone in a forest, it's like that's the most fearful, nerve-wracking part, just like the quiet. So something about the vibe and the vibration of it is kind of calming. And when Tom moved here, I would come and visit once or twice a year and stay for a couple of weeks at a time. And the more I stayed, I'm just like, fuck, I just really kind of like it here. And at the same time, I kind of grew up in the suburbs of Vancouver, and I spent, 30 whatever years in Vancouver, and I slowly started not liking Vancouver as much and noticing a huge kind of difference in how people are. And New York kind of has like famous kind of infamous for being kind of like rude, but they're not just rude, they're not fake polite. They don't there's the
Yeah.
manners here, like people don't really say please and thank you for stuff here, but if you talk to anyone that you don't know here, they'll talk to you like a person, and they'll kind of treat you like a person. There's no fake politeness or manners. It's just like it's more like a real thing, which to me is kind of, it's more real, and it's kind of kinder. They're not more polite, but the kindness of people here hit me drastically in contrast to where I kind of came up, where there's like manners and politeness where we're from. But you try talking to someone, and maybe it's different for you because I think you have a real charismatic personality, but you try talking to, for me, I try talking to a stranger in Vancouver, and they tend to kind of freak out. They don't know how to deal with a stranger talking to them. They don't know if you want to like, get their number after, but it's just straight. That kindness hit me. So that kind of brought me here, and I was lucky enough to get my place in Vancouver rented out. That affords me my little shoebox here in the city, and I love it more and more, man. And it's the laziness that I have, is really goes well with the city, because if we kind of eat the same food. If you want like a healthy kind of Buddha bowl or salad at 11 p.m. brought
Yeah.
to your door,
Yeah.
or like a smoothie, you can get that shit here. If it's 2 a.m., you want to go get like a peanut butter acai bowl or whatever the fuck kind of hippie shit that we love to eat.
Yeah.
It's all over here, and like multiple choices of it. And that
Yeah.
is like the laziness of me, and the convenience that I've gotten used to is like blows my mind, and it blows my mind the most when I leave and I go to other cities. I went to Denver a couple years ago, and like it's like 8:30 or 9, and we're trying to find a place to eat, and shit's like closed. Like how
Yeah.
like dinner places are closed. Like how do dinner places close at 8? Like
Yeah.
what are you doing?
You can't even get a reservation. What are you doing? You say you got picking up the New York accent too. You can't. Yeah. I think the last time I was there, or one of the times I was there, just being in an Uber and just chatting, we were talking about just how vast it is. And I think somebody said that if every day of your life you went breakfast, lunch, dinner to a restaurant or cafe or whatever to eat, like every meal was eaten out, breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, for your entire life, you still would not be able to go to every single restaurant in New York. Like there's just so many options. There's so many places. It's so big. And funny, you said like that the busyness helps with your anxiety. The last time I was there, though, I usually go pretty hard, and I think the last time the fuck did I do? One of the last times I was at library. Was it Library Bar or the library?
Yeah, the library bar.
Which is
I think it's officially the library, but the library bar. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, you told me to check that place out because they have a rad jukebox, and then Meredith and everybody who works there is fucking cool. And I was like, this place is deadly. So the first time I went there with you, and I always go back, and I always have a great time. And yeah, people are super friendly. People are down to chat. Like, I've met rad people in New York. But I put in a pretty late shift and was leaving to head back to go to bed at about 5 a.m. and saw Katz's Deli, and just something told me I really want to eat a big hunk of meat between bread right now, even though I'm a vegan, or a pretty shitty one. And so I went and ate, like, dude, it's just like fucking like probably like 4 inches of just meat, like red meat.
For the people that don't know, it's maybe the most famous deli in America, and it's famous there's like lineups to it constantly, and it's been in movies like when Harry Met Sally, where she fakes the orgasm. It's in that diner, and it's in like lots of like kind of hip hop videos. But there's like always like there's a place in Montreal that people say is the best deli, but that Montreal joint and this place are kind of like people say are the best delis, and they're known for their whatever pastrami on rye kind of sandwich. Yeah, but yeah, it's like too much food, right? I live right there.
Yeah,
so I walk by it almost every day, but it's just.
I woke up the next day and I was like, it was fucking super hot and muggy, and I was hungover as shit because I'd had a pretty fun couple of nights there, and then I had that thing grumbling in my belly. Just hadn't really figured out that it was going to leave yet. Just wanted to kind of, was like, what the fuck is that with my stomach? Is like, what did you put in me last night? How do I break this down? It's not a bunch of celery. And I got booted out of my basic hotel. Was calling me at like 10:58, get out, you're out at 11, like there's no leeway. And I'm like, fuck, like my flight's not till 4. And I was just sitting on like a corner with my like little suitcase on my lap, like my head in it, just like wanting to vomit, not being able to, just dying basically. And I'm like, I can't fucking fly today. Like there's no way. And I ended up just not going to my flight, booking another flight the next day, booking a hotel, which I got a decent deal in, but still, American exchange, so 30%. Then, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to the hotel. I'm going to like try to get this thing out of me. Hopefully it's ready to pass and chill out. And then, I got another night in New York. And then all I did was just lay in my hotel room and order food. Like I did nothing with that extra 24 hours. Wow. And then there was like a storm or some shit the next day. So my flight was delayed leaving. I got stuck in Chicago, couldn't get home, had to cancel gigs.
Wow.
Like all because I ate Katz's, and like, don't get me wrong, it was worth cheating because it was so delicious. Because I do love meat, I just don't love the idea of animals dying. But I never went the vegan route because I was like, oh, this burger tastes disgusting, or this filet mignon is gross. It was more the suffering and that sort of mentality, or the environmental mostly the ethical, I guess, is that what you'd say? Or
Mhm.
just animals, man. I didn't want them to die. So it was delicious. If you like that, Cat's Deli sure is delicious, but I paid fucking for that
It's like
for
paying
not
what it cost. What?
like if that happened to everyone that when they ate meat, then the whole world would be vegan, 100%. Like it was the worst 2 days just because I ate a sandwich at 4 in the fucking morning.
And it's also sad because the best drunk food is literally across from Cats, so around the corner from the library. This is all in the same block for people listening. Is a 24-hour vegan Punjabi,
Shut
uh,
up.
like a takeout. And it's legit as fuck. There's always constant taxi cars lined up because it's where all the taxi drivers go because they just know this is like legit Punjabi food, and it's all vegan, and it's open 24 hours, and it's across from Cat, so it's around the corner from the library. And
Good
that's
to
the
know
best
now.
food in it, because they have like 12 different things there that are always made, that are just ready to go, and you just like eat standing up, and
I
that's the
can't eat standing up though. So
the one thing I miss. Standing up. Oh man.
no, you brought me that stuff one time, and it is good. So good to know.
Is
I
it
will
good?
next time I'm in New York and having a good time. Hopefully, the library bar is still there when I come back.
Yeah, Kristen, who manages it, I think it's opening soon. She manages some other bars, and those have been opening. So I'm not sure when the library bar is opening, but it's all opening. I went to my first movie last night for the first time in like a year and a half, and I was just like smiling the whole time. It was
Yeah,
like a horror movie, and I was just over the moon. I missed that so much, just going to the movies. And yeah, it was my 2 week after my second vaccination shot was
oh, you got your
yesterday. So
second one.
yeah, so it was 2 weeks since my second one yesterday. So I'm like, I'm gonna celebrate by going to a movie, and there's no one really in there. There's like two other people, but just to
You,
celebrate. I kind of do this like, speaking of like addiction, my sobriety day, like the day I got off my shit, is in June. So I'm gonna go, and you would dig this, is I bought tickets to the Comedy Cellar. They're allowing people that are been vaccinated to, if you bring your vaccination card and showing you got your 2 shots, you can go and get tickets to the Comedy Cellar now, which for people that don't know is kind of one of New York's best comedy clubs.
oh, that's one of
And
like most iconic comedy clubs in the world.
it's awesome. It's awesome because it's
Yeah,
little, it's low ceilings. It's what you need. What you need for comedy, as you probably know, is the opposite of music. Music, you want really high ceilings and kind of open space, and that works better with music. Comedy, you want everyone together in really low ceilings, and for some reason, comedy works better in those kind of smaller rooms because you're kind of stuck and you hear the laughter and it's
yeah.
contagious. And so it's been a minute since I've been to, it's been over a year and a half too. So got my ticket to the Comedy Cellar, and I'm stoked because it's a Monday, and as you know, like Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, bigger names are going to show up, people that are kind of more established, but those Mondays to Thursdays is when people work out their sets. So I enjoy seeing people work out their sets because I enjoy great jokes, of course, like we all do, but I also enjoy bombs and ones that
Yeah.
don't hit. And I love this. The awkwardness of the crickets is something that's so fucking funny to me too, because they
Yeah.
don't know. As you know, it's like the only art form that you got it. Like the best singer or the best painter in the world is alone in their room right now doing what they do, and they're the best in the world, and no one has to see them or hear them for them to be the best. But comedy, again, as you know, is the one art form you really have to do in front of people to know if it works, to know if it's good, to get better at it. You have to
Yeah.
perform it in front of people. So to be a part of that, to see people work out their sets coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm fucking so stoked about it, man.
Yeah, it's cool. And even just like the process. And I know like starting comedy, I mean, I was in open mics all the time, and you watch people like you know what works, what doesn't. You see the like joke or the set kind of change and take structure, and it's really interesting. And definitely you're right. Like you got to be in front of an audience, and even like you can post the funniest thing on that gets so many laughs and everybody loves it, and it gets shared on say like a Twitter or Facebook or something. But then you go do that on stage and it can not work, right? So you really do got to try comedy
Yeah.
in front of a crowd. Let's talk about like, because I think that some, because you did go down a pretty dark path, and we'll kind of go back a bit where you got into some pretty hard drugs. And I know my cousin the other day was like, "You're having Steve on your podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, how do you know Steve?" And she's like, I went to like a rave with him." And I'm like, "Oh, he was probably, were you guys fucked up?" And she's like, I don't know what we were on." I'm like, "I guarantee he was probably ripping pretty high if he's at a rave." Because you got into some serious drugs. How are my S's now that I have this foamy thing on my mic?
Sound great, buddy. You look even better.
Thank you. So yeah, tell us about heroin.
Okay. It is great. If you've never done it, you got to do it.
Fuck.
If you have any,
Okay, so this is for the kids.
if you have any sadness in you, any kind of hole inside it, fills it right up. And you just got to try it once, and just to see what it's like. A lot of people don't know what it's like. A lot of movies try to compress what it's like in movies. In Train Spotting, they say it's like the world's best orgasm times 100. In like Basketball Diaries, it showed Leonardo DiCaprio running through like a field of flowers in slow motion. You remember that, like a male Tampax commercial?
I remember blowing a dude in like a fucking shitty bathroom for drugs. That's more what I remember. Where I was like, that part looks unappealing to me. The sucking cock for it part.
Of course, you remember it because that was your wallpaper on your iPhone. And that's seen it from what I remember.
Still is.
But to me, the drug was so good. The high was so good. I can explain it the best this way. It was so good that it made me love the band Sublime. A band that's so horrible. And if you don't know Sublime,
why do people hate Sublime? I don't get it.
Well, if you don't know them, they're like the sonic version of what cargo shorts and like tank tops look like. They look like they're gonna sell you drugs or like date rape you. It's just,
They have a song called Date Rape.
Oh yeah, is that what with the No Doubt singer too? Didn't they do a duet?
No, that was a different one. I can't remember what that one was called. People really hate Sublime. That's funny. I actually quite, but I like ska and that kind of shit. Though that's probably, people would say that's not ska, but a little bit of horns and pick it up, happy music. Can't all be vampires.
They are like, they're in that Nickelback thing where I should, I'm just joking. I never really hate. I was debating about this.
Tell us more about Nickelback, because I'm pretty sure Chad owns 604 Records, and Comedy Here Often Network is part of 604 Records, and that is who produces this show. So tell us more.
Well, I heard he has a huge penis.
He is, or has one?
He has one.
Okay, you're being complimentary.
I met a girl at a bar here in New York, and another amazing bar called Death and Co. When next time you come, we'll go there.
Yeah.
And it's like a speakeasy, like a hidden kind of bar, and it's like a fancy cocktail bar, like really really nice, drinks. The opposite of library, kind of,
Yeah. They don't have nice drinks.
Well, I mean, like like $14 cocktail drinks. Right?
Yeah.
Library bar is more of a dive bar. This is more like a speakeasy, like $14 American, so like $38 Canadian.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And I met this woman one time, was there with like her boyfriend, and she, I guess, had dated Mr. Kroger, and she was going off about like how large and endowed this dude was. And I was like, oh, that's something I'll put on my iPhone wallpaper. your next
Dwarshak test.
But that's the thing, man. It's such an easy. I was debating about this.
Is he your dad?
And it's such an easy go-to. It's, as you know, hack jokes are so.
Yeah, fuck Nickelback.
The lamest of the lame.
Yeah.
Like the lamest humor is usually, in a lot of cases, the most popular humor, and the lamest humor to comedians is hacky jokes. The easiest to go to, the shortest line between setup and punchline that everyone has already known and thought of or said. So when people make fun of Nickelback, it's like the hackiest shit, and it's like you can't. And even you get to a point where it's like,
I like them now because so many people hate them. I'm like, they're punk rock now because they're so hated.
And you get to a point where it's like it's people making sounds with instruments. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, you're gonna hate someone just making music. I understand maybe not liking their fans if their fans are known to be like pieces of shit or like dicks or assholes or whatever part of the body you want to pick. But you can't hate dudes for just making fucking songs and doing songs that they like they're
And
making
a lot of
songs
people
they
like them too.
like, well, of course, fucking hundreds of millions of people at one
Yeah.
time they were played on the radio. At one point they were played so much you could tune into a station, they were constantly were played. So everyone that's like talking shit, the amount of albums, I read a thing one time that showed that the amount of albums that they sold, 1 in 3 people bought them. So that all these people talking shit,
Like in the
one
world?
of those, yeah, well,
That's
in North
insane.
America,
Yeah.
North America for sure. So one of these 3 people talking shit, one of them fucking bought one of these albums. So they're all fucking, it's all bullshit anyways. They're so big. So
Maybe those are the people who are like, these guys fucking suck because they actually bought the album.
I don't know.
Worst $20 I ever spent.
It's so hacky. It's so hacky.
It is very hacky, and I never got into him, but yeah, I never want to be like fuck Nickelback.
Yeah, like who cares? Like that's like if that's part of someone's fucking identity.
I used to.
Is hating Nickelback, like it's
Yeah, it's almost as lame as hating Sublime.
I didn't hate them. I said heroin is so good it made me love them.
Okay, so but yeah, you went down. Okay, I just for liability purposes, I'm just gonna say don't try heroin, because it is, although it does make you feel great, apparently it is a highly addictive drug, and it's a pretty scary time right now. With fentanyl and like,
man, it's that, and that's such a crazy thing. Because
was that around when you were like in your days of doing it?
No, there's no. I mean, it maybe it was, but in my knowledge, in my small encompassing world of that time, there was no oxys and no fentanyl, and it's so crazy because it's gotten to a point now with the opioid pandemic everywhere. Is that movie? I said I went to see my first movie last night, and part of the trailers for the movie was a fucking opioid pandemic, not like
Awareness?
a treatment. Yeah, more like an outreach, like, hey, we can come and help, we can come and to your house. And it was like a fucking commercial for the opioid pandemic before the movie. And it's like, holy fuck, this is just crazy. Like in between Fast and Furious 9 and whatever the fuck, it's an opioid commercial for like help with opioids. And that made me kind of think how much it's kind of turned. And the sad thing is it turned because the white kids started getting addicted. Like I think Chappelle has a bit where like there was a fucking pandemic before this pandemic, and I'm not talking about this the COVID one. I'm talking about before this opioid pandemic hit middle of America. Crack epidemic in the 80s that hit the inner cities was just as bad, just as much as a killer, and it kind of seemed like it was like a them problem that it wasn't really on the news all the time with the shit that went down with people dying and fighting and killing and overdosing on crack cocaine. And all of a sudden, the sad thing is, man, is all of a sudden middle of America starts getting addicted to these legal pills, Oxycontin, which is pretty much heroin. And now there's fucking ads in the movie theater about it. And that's kind of the sad thing. But the silver lining is it is bringing awareness to it. And but it's all after my time. Before, like, there wasn't that, like, Train Spotting hadn't even come out yet. Like the idea of heroin was only from like from movies and literature, really, for me and for my crew. And it wasn't like a thing we like sought after. I kind of came up in a place in a time where designer drugs were just popping off. Like most kids, we smoked weed and I did lots of acid. And then my older brother, who was a year and a half older, in the mid 90s, early 90s, so he got into the techno scene in Vancouver, like the DJ rave scene, which was just popping off. And what went along with that world is the designer drugs and the meth. And meth was such a big kind of thing back then because it was new to those people. Like, these are like, I was 14, but they were like 16 or whatever. They hadn't seen, because where meth takes you, it's insane. Like the spiral of meth.
Yeah.
The difference between cocaine and meth is coke heads run away from the cops. Meth is so crazy. You run towards the cops because you're just fucking scattered. And the kind of harsh thing about that at that time is there was no, you hadn't seen it run its course yet, because it, you know, takes whatever, 6 months, a year, 2 years before people that are really into it to start going down that spiral, and you start seeing what meth kind of does to you. So it's such a fresh thing to those kids down there. So having him kind of in that world, and it was so adjacent to the electronic scene in Vancouver and the club scene in Vancouver at that time. Again, this is going back in the day. So every once in a while, I would get these like pills from him. I would like ecstasy or like, you know, mescaline or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Every like
I think it was PCP back then, because we used to get that too, and then later found out that it was PCP.
Yeah. Yeah, we would have every Thursday, we would have a thing called Peace Nights. We would do PCP on Thursdays. And I shouldn't maybe mention names, but and people would, and it was such a thing, we would do it, and again, don't do it, but for us it was a innocent thing. We would walk through forests at night, and it was during the winter at one time. It was all like snowy, and it would kind of compress you, so you would kind of feel like a small person. And yeah, so I was kind of open to the world of trying anything once, just to see what it was like, because the thing about all that shit is people say don't just say no, which is like the stupidest thing to say, but you got to really realize why you like it. You got to really realize, hey, how are these working? Like the most dangerous thing about a lot of these drugs is they work for you in a way where they take away, well, now there's studies coming out with like how MDMA and psilocybin from magic mushrooms are giving to soldiers for post-traumatic stress disorder, or for handling depression, and it's really working more than any other way that they've done it in the past. So there is something to it in a way that it kind of can medicate, and that's what we're all doing. I think a lot of time, addicts, is you're medicating for whatever reason, and that's the scariest thing about it, is they work really well, and they kind of medicate, and they kind of fix things that seem wrong with you. So I was always open to it because I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed how acid made me think. I enjoyed how I thought differently, not just answering questions, but thinking of new questions in your mind and changing your perception and your paradigm of your whole fucking life and how you see who you are and your friends and your family. I enjoyed that. So I was open, arms wide open to try whatever. So when heroin came to me, at the time I was around 16, I at first said no because I had such a bigger taboo.
Big Nancy Reagan fan.
I mean, just her hair mostly.
Yes. Her below the belt or above the belt hair?
God. Yeah.
Okay, anyways, we're talking about Bush now. Go back.
Yeah, or Bush X, known in Canada.
Yes.
Glycerin.
Nitroglycerin.
Where were we?
You'd smoke it with heroin. I don't know. I'm a piece of shit.
Nitroglycerin is good for anal fissures. But to anyone listening, having tears in their anus, you got to get nitroglycerin because it helps bring the blood to that area and helps it heal. But when heroin was brought to me, at first I said no because it's such a huge taboo with it. But then I thought, oh my God, I try all these other things. Why not try it? And then, yeah, I tried it the first time. And I remember it clear as day, man. I went for a walk to a drugstore, and a group of women came in, East Indian women that had been at, I guess, a wedding or something, because they were all done up in the most beautiful saris, just like the patterns and the designs and sparkly, and their makeup was like beautiful and like real traditional Indian wedding garb under like this horrible high school fluorescent lighting shining down on them. And
it's like PharmaSave.
And it hit me, yeah, at London Drugs on Broadway. And it hit me, and it just felt like love. And it's just like, this is different. This is hitting different. And it was like lots of love affairs, a fucking trying, horrible time that you just wanted to quit from. Got there pretty quick. And this is the same time going to work and learn, man. I remember like,
and I didn't know you were doing that then, which is, again, we went to school together and we hung out a little bit maybe outside of school, but I guess that's not something you go around and tell people either. You're not like, hey guys, we're in the tent, like, you guys got to I got some heroin if you want to.
remember some embarrassing. I remember one dude. I would cut the lining. Those like leather fucking jackets I had. I would cut the lining of the sleeves, holes in the lining, so I could hide my spoon and rigs were hidden in the lining of my sleeves. And I
Yeah.
remember one time I was like pretending to read or whatever in my fucking desk, and I looked down and a burnt spoon had fallen out of my jacket on the floor, and I looked over and
Yeah.
one of the other dudes like just saw it. And
Oh
it's,
no.
you
Like
know,
the guy's working there or one of the students?
no, like a student, and I
Yeah.
just like I felt I was it was such shame and
Yeah, there is a shame around that drug. It's, isn't there?
oh totally. I mean, just getting to a place where you're not you get to such a and what made me hate it eventually when I first went to my first rehab, I was around 19. You get to a place where you and like anyone with addiction knows, or anyone that knows anyone that's been in it, you lose such control and you're not in control, and you're like a slave to it, and you're not the master of it, and the that is such a feeling of you just feel weak, and the shame and the guilt of that is just one of the weights on top of that world that you get to, and
Yeah.
that's
And
yeah,
physical too, right? Like to get off it, it sounds like it's physically devastating, like to your body. Like it,
yeah, it's the craziest. It's like the craziest. It's not like it's not like a sharp stabbing pain. It's like this like constant pain that's feels like it's inside your bones, and it would get to a point where like me and a girl I was dating at the time, we would like hit our legs against the wall when we were in bed, because you want to have like a different pain than the
yeah,
one you have. Like a sharper pain felt better than what this pain did. And that's not even the worst part. Like the pain is horrible and it lasts 4 days or so, but then afterwards, because you've been doing that drug for so long, your brain stops making those chemicals like the dopamine and all that shit that your brain makes for you to feel happy, for you to feel content. It
yeah,
stops releasing it and eventually stops kind of making it. So when you go through those withdrawals, you're not getting that hitter anymore, and your brain doesn't make that chemical anymore. So the kind of depression and the dullness and the gray that you feel, and the uncontentment that you hit, they call it secondary withdrawals. That when that hits, that's what would make me always go back, was just that mind state of the gray. It
yeah.
was
I think
just
anybody, man, who wants to feel like that, fuck.
that was the shittiest part, and it's crazy the amount of people going through it now, and it's crazy, and it's crazy to see these kids now because of the opiate pandemic hitting America in the middle of American shit, where not normal druggy kids are doing it. They're finding that heroin is cheaper to do, gives
Then
you
the
the same
pills.
feeling, yeah, than the
Well, yeah,
hospital.
because they're pulling all those pills, the painkillers that their mom got for a bad knee, and then mom got hooked on them, and then because she's taking legal heroin. I watched a documentary the other day called "Crime of the Century" that I encourage anybody to watch. And fuck Purdue, and fuck Johnson and Johnson's, and fuck so many people in the government who just turned a blind eye. They knew people were getting addicted. They knew it was dangerous. They fuck up doctors like who just overprescribed and just were basically pill mills, and like they created a country with a massive addiction problem that wasn't on that level before. um is infuriating, man. Like there was a dude from the DEA basically like standing in front of Congress going, we know this drug is addictive and it's killing people, they're ODing, and sadly having to say like, and we're not talking junkies, we're talking like fucking soccer moms, and like that teenage kid who one day pops a pill and to try at a party, like white kids, like sadly people that count to fucking assholes in power and government. And the whole Senate or whoever it was that were like voting on it, they didn't even listen. They just went, nope. And just billions and billions and billions of dollars flowed into Purdue. And then Purdue ended up paying so many of these, like all these Congress people ended up getting like $100,000, $1 million, multi-$100,000 contributions to their campaigns from these drug companies. And then the drug companies, when they actually did get caught, they'd get fined, which to us sounds like, oh my god, like $60 million fine, but they're making billions of dollars. Like that, at the end of the day, that does fucking nothing to them, and they're still going and they're still doing the same thing. It is crime of the century. I mean, that's what it was called, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. Just I think 500,000 plus people have died. As many people died from the pandemic, the opioid pandemic, as they have of the COVID-19 or whatever you want to call it. And sadly, like, more are gonna die because it's still there. And it's the other day, friends of mine in Atlanta, I guess there was a bad batch of coke or something going around, and I don't know that I knew any of the people that it happened to. I think I might have known one of them because he was Turbo Jugend, but I guess they got into the shit, and there was fentanyl in coke, which, you being someone who's done drugs and anyone who has done drugs, those are two very different drugs. And you could do coke your whole life, but when you get an opioid that's like 100 times stronger than fentanyl, or than, sorry, morphine, and potentially heroin, like, your body doesn't know how to, it can't deal with that, and it's just overload. And 3 people died during one weekend, and I think that's why you're seeing stuff like that in commercials. And I heard that even in just for people to know, you can get like Narcan kits here in Canada for free, naloxone. And in the States, apparently in Walgreens and CVS, you can get a nasal spray.
Right.
That's fucking Narcan or naloxone, which is basically when you OD, you stop breathing because I think those receptors get overloaded, and your body starts to shut down. And that spray, that naloxone, gives you a window of time to basically save your life or save someone else's. Probably, hopefully, someone else's saving someone else's. Good to have on hand if you work at a bar, just hang out with people who party hard. But it gives you time. Generally, still, that person needs to like get to a hospital and probably get the stuff pumped out of them, but it gives you a window to keep them alive, to get them help. Whereas I know some junkies and stuff, people, or not, I want to say junkies is probably a derogatory word, it just sounds bad, but people who maybe do opioids like by choice, because I know there's people who buy fentanyl to do fentanyl, like, because if you've been doing heroin, you probably would have went to that point because you were doing heroin. You're like, well, what's stronger than heroin? Fentanyl.
Well, it's cheaper. I think that's why the dealers use this, because it's cheaper, right? But yeah, if you can know the amount, because the thing is, it's in, like, all this shit gets mixed in someone's bathtub somewhere and then put into little flaps and sold, so you don't know, because one flap's gonna have this much fentanyl, this is gonna have maybe none in it.
Yeah, it's like, I made the comparison the other day. That's kind of like when you're baking fucking, like, chocolate chip cookies, like, or like blueberry muffins, and one muffin has one blueberry and the other one has 20. How do you know? But instead of it being blueberries, it's a drug that can kill you, a highly, highly toxic drug.
Yeah, like a poisonous blueberry.
Yeah, a poisonous blueberry. Yes, which is the name of your new electronic sober band. But true story. I mean, like, but to be real, like, our buddy Chris Lafreniere, I don't know if you remember him. Like, he died from an overdose that they thought it was in weed. That maybe it was just like cross contamination. We've lost some friends, so it's a serious thing. And you ended up working, getting involved, did you not, while you were here before you moved away?
Yeah, there's a place in Vancouver called Insight. That's a safe injection site. They've popped up now in a lot of cities across Canada. Vancouver was the first one, because back in the day, I mean, it's worse now, but back in the day, it was just getting so bad, the amount of overdoses in the Vancouver streets, in that Hastings area and the downtown east side of Vancouver. They tried this pilot program that was just a place where people could go in. There would be some nurses working there and a couple of us working there. What we're called mental health care workers. We really were just like mental health care janitors, and then like a bunch of booths with mirrors, so people could go and shoot up safely, not share needles, get assistance if they needed more help with like housing or whatever. That was there for them. If they wanted to get clean, that was there for them. But it wasn't about changing who they were or what they wanted to do. It was about meeting them where they're at and keeping them alive. Because if you ever do want to get clean, you got to be alive to do it, and keeping them, giving them clean stuff to not spread the diseases like Hep C or AIDS around, and also to get open drug use off of the streets. So it was a thing that was like pretty controversial at the time, because people were like, you're going to give a place for junkies to fucking shoot up.
I remember that, yeah.
Very quickly it became beloved by people, because just for an ambulance to go to someone overdosed on the street, it's like $800. And then if they were to be taken back to the hospital, it's thousands of dollars a day. If they overdose in our facility, it's not costing taxpayers hundreds or thousands of dollars for someone overdosing, because we're already there. So it's like for every dollar that Insight spent, it saved the tax payers $4. So when that data started coming out, people couldn't really argue against that. The businesses loved it because it got people, a large majority of people, off of the streets into our facility to do what they were going to do, and they like that for business because they're not doing it in the streets anymore. And then people just the rate of overdoses went down, because everyone that ever overdosed when I was there, and I think it's still true, we had, you know, I forget the number, but like hundreds and hundreds, I think into the thousands of overdoses in our facility, and no one ever died. We all brought them back because we were right there with the Narcan and what have you for when people would overdose. And we had like a chill out lounge after the injection sites, because it usually happens 10-15 minutes after you use. So there they could get a coffee and just kind of hang out for a bit, and we could observe them, make sure they're okay before they went back out. And it was an amazing thing that was just like really showed, if you just look at it, no matter where your ideology is of what you think a human deserves, if you just look at the data of money saved, lives saved, and diseases going down, it got to a point where it's like black and white. Here, look, like you can't really argue with this shit doing kind of good, even if you don't believe in the ideology. The good that it's doing for you as just a normal citizen, Joe Blow, it's doing good. And then at the time that I was there, the Canadian government, when we had our kind of Republican dude in office, Stephen Harper, tried to shut us down.
I hated that fucker. That's the first time I ever voted in my life was for Trudeau, and it was just because I hated fucking Harper so much.
Oh, really? So he tried to shut us down. We went to the Supreme Court of British Columbia, won the case. He kept trying to shut us down. We had to go to the Supreme Court of Canada for us not to get shut down. And we won that case. Like we actually went against the government of Canada, our injection site, and we won, and we're allowed to stay open. And now they're kind of opening up across Canada. They have. I've been out of the circle for a while since I moved here. But yeah, it was just kind of rad. It was a job. All my kind of my circle, a bunch of dudes in my circle of friends all worked for that organization. And I'm like, that's a job I can kind of do, because I kind of just know, I know how to I kind of know a little of that world. I know how to find a van. I know how to cook up drugs. And I'm not really a judgmental dude. So I felt like I was good at it too, because I was just, I kind of viewed it like at one time when I needed to get new needles, I would have to go down there sometimes and go to the needle exchange and try to get needles. And they were always kind of dicks to me. They were kind of like these dudes. They were kind of like dicks, like, because you needed a number to get needles, and I just wanted needles. And they're like, what's your number? I would always have to say, oh, I just got out of jail, or I'm from Toronto and I don't have one. And they were always kind of like a dick about it. It's like, dude, like a fucking 17-year-old kid getting a needle, and you're being a dick because I'm asking for a clean needle. And it's so cool that those fuckers are wherever the fuck now gone. And there was more of a welcoming, safer kind of place for people to do it safely. So
you definitely got to have people who are like compassionate and have empathy working in those places, not people who are judging, right?
Yeah, these guys were they just seemed like the bartenders in the Canby, that this was like their day gig,
Yeah.
And not the right dudes to do it. So I felt like I was just on the other side of the same table, because I literally was on the other side of that table at one point. So I think it gave me a little bit of a way to put up with it. Not put up with it, but not get burnt out and not have, because you're surrounded by constant kind of death, because people are dying, and you're surrounded by trauma, right? Like everyone you meet, when you really get to know, we would have over 1,000 injections a day. So you get to know these people, and you get to know that it all comes from some kind of trauma. I know that's like a word that people like to use, but these people come from fucking some heavy shit, and this
Yeah.
thing that they're doing is kind of medicating, and you kind of you can never kind of have any negative feeling about it. It's almost like, it's almost like when they do a really good job on like a quote unquote villain's backstory in a movie. It's like, oh, if you give us 2 hours of a snapshot of how this person came to be the person that you now know,
Yeah.
it creates empathy, and you kind of can see yourself or someone you know in them. And that's
Yeah,
what
they're doing that now with like the Joker, and I even think Cruella de Vil. I believe that's what they're doing with these movies
why
now.
did you want to kill those puppies? We
I
want to
heard that.
know. People want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, man, and I think that's the good thing, that there's a shift in society now, and I think just and from the top, where you had a piece of shit like Harper, who's just gonna go with the I don't fucking care, but conservative, probably like drugs are bad, people who do drugs are making a bad choice, addicts are dirty, like, and not seeing the person behind it, or the trauma behind it, or the reasons behind it, or the fact that addiction is a disease, they call it that. You know what I mean? It's not so much a choice. Um,
Yeah, it's
it's
true. I
more.
mean, I think it just comes from. You also have to give those people a bit of a leeway because you're dealing with ignorance, right? And I don't mean ignorant like a street term, like you're ignorant. I mean like
Yeah,
true ignorance. So when people, if they truly their understanding is like the way you get someone off drugs is you arrest them, you put
yeah,
them in jail. Once they're in jail, they will get help, and until they uh, accept that help, they continually go to jail. And if that's their ideology of how you help an addict, it's an ignorance, because you can see now over the past 20 to 30 years, the studies of it, that doesn't work. The war on drugs, it was lost long ago, and that's not how you fight the fight. There's no fight to fight. You have to just accumulate understanding of the situation. And when someone comes from poverty, comes from a place where there wasn't anywhere to go to for the shit that they were going through, and then they find these drugs, like even dumb suburban white kids find, and they work, you have to address that issue. It's not about reforming them through the jails. It's about the prevention and resources that they needed when they were youths. And
yeah. And they also have people preying on them, drug dealers, like,
right.
offering them drugs because they're great potential customers. I'm sure drug dealers are good at sniffing out somebody who's been through trauma who could be a
But even
great.
them, to be real, they're just supplying a service. Like to you, they're just like you can't be mad at a bullet for a guy shooting people, or be mad at the guy selling the gun at the gun store. I mean, they're supplying a demand that's there, and you can't get mad at the dude doing that hustle, because the hustle is there to be hustled. It's
Yeah.
about the demand that we can look at. I think we have to have an understanding of why the demand is, and when the demand falls away, that hustle will fall away, and they'll get into something else. Some good friends I came up with were on the end of selling things that were wanted by people, and that's just, you know yeah, I can't knock that hustle, because it's I think it's a um displaced anger at the wrong person, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could be. But I also go on record saying anyone who cuts fentanyl in a drug and nobody knows they're getting it, you're a piece of shit because you're potentially killing somebody.
Not only are you a piece of shit, but more importantly to their career, they're bad business people, because
100%.
you're killing your customers.
Doesn't
The
make sense.
craziest thing is, like, hundreds of people, I think, die a day, and it's just stupid fucking business. Like, if you're in the game, if you're in the hustle to do what you do, and you're taking out people that are buying your product, it's the stupidest business move. Like,
Yeah.
how dumb is that? So
Yeah.
it's completely just the harshest part of a short view, man, for sure.
Well, dude, just wanted to show you this because I was like, what am I gonna wear today? Rocking
That coming out.
yeah, sure. Zoom in.
Can you zoom in on Zoom?
I don't think I can, but can you see it? We got our good pal Angus Atkinson
Oh
on our
wow.
shirt.
Yeah, yo.
So I thought I'd throw that on today and give a shout out to Angus. Passed away at a motorcycle crash maybe about 6 years ago, and our good buddy Ty, who I think's having a kid today or tomorrow.
Oh wow! Shout out to Tyler. He was going back to those shitty punk bands that we were in, playing the Cloverdale shows. In most of those projects, Tyler was the drummer
Yes.
of those bands.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a real OG, man.
We definitely go way back, man. Lots of buddies. Yeah, we lived lives for sure, interesting lives. I'm glad you're doing well in New York, man, and playing some bass and gob. Maybe to close it out, just because we've talked about some heavy shit. How about telling like your favorite? Because we're gonna be maybe hopefully playing live shows again soon, and I'm sure you can't wait for that.
Yeah.
What's a memory like when you're like laying in bed and you're like, fuck, I can't wait to like have a show again, and I'm like on stage and this. What's part of playing that you're like missing that you can't wait to do again?
It's a good question, man, and it's good because I don't ever like think that those things. Playing shows are fun, but I don't like daydream about being on stage. The things, and it's cheesy, but the things that kind of hit that stay with you, it's the other 23 hours of the day when you're on that tour. Being on stage is awesome, and shows are amazing. Some shows are amazing, some are like aren't amazing, and some crowds are rad and some aren't, but it's all just whatever. But it's everything else, and it's truly those other 23 hours where you're chilling. I'm lucky enough to play in a band with like the dudes in the band I like, and they're good dudes and they're funny, and we're all so different. And one of the things that gives a band longevity, it's like a movie, it's like Ghostbusters, or it's like the A-Team. You have to be kind of different. They're all kind of different. It's like a boy band. Like there's like the funny guy, there's like the fucking muscle, there's like whatever, the introvert, and you have to have that kind of spectrum. And when you have that spectrum and you're together, this gel happens because you all have that kind of character that you would have like in the A-Team, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just the chilling out, and it's like looking up, finding like rad restaurants and towns, going into a town that you like, that you just would never have gone to, like especially in Canada. You have like the 7 major cities, as you know, but then there's these little towns a couple hours out that are just like have such a personality, their own architecture. People are so stoked that you're there because they are a smaller town. You get to walk around and meet people. It's that kind of shit that I kind of think about of seeing, and just getting out and seeing like the world through that way, because it's rad. And playing a show is great, but it's really, you go in, you do a sound check, it stinks like fucking beer on the ground, and it's the funnest thing in the world. And the raddest way to make a living is being on a stage and playing music, and people actually paying money to like watch you play music is insane. But back to your question, when you're just lying there and you're thinking about it, what parts do you miss? It's all that other stuff. It's the chilling with my boy Theo, you know, talking with Tommy, fucking around with Gabe, our drummer, and all of that, and the whole camaraderie of it. And it's super cheesy to hear myself say, but that's the shit you miss, because you're just like chilling with your boys. And
But you're on an adventure, man. Like who wouldn't miss that? I get that. I get to travel around, but I'm usually by myself.
Yeah,
but I get to meet up with people like you and stuff. But I get it. I miss that too.
Yeah, it's like the 4 hobbits, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because those guys
Bobbits.
are little. The gobbits.
The gobbits. Yeah, I said bobbits. I was thinking of
the
John Wayne Bobbitt who got his wiener cut off.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy that's someone had a bit about it where like that's like people laugh about that.
Yes.
It's so crazy. If that
I just did
do whatever, but if someone cut off a girl's parts, you couldn't. There's no way that would ever be funny. Like that's insanely horror that would happen.
Yeah.
A tragic tale, and it's so funny that a dude gets his stuff cut off, and it's like it's a punchline to people. You know what I mean?
It's a punchline for shitty comedians making reference to
that's a callback.
yeah. to
People.
to an incident that happened probably before fucking 40% of the people listening to this were even
Hey,
born.
go Google it.
Go Google
image
Bob
it.
it. Google Gob, and Google Stranger Radio,
Yeah, Stranger Radio. Go hit it up.
and follow Steve. Where do you post your fucking hilarious rants?
Oh, my YouTube. I got a YouTube channel. Just go to stephenfairweather.com and all my shit's up there. The Stranger Radio radio station where we have 30 shows doing all kinds of genres of music. Gob stuff is up there. I do some writing that's up there, and then I started a YouTube show where I kind of take my radio rants and put images to them on my YouTube channel. The link to that is all up on stephenfairweather.com. So go check that out, or follow me at Stephen Fairweather to see the bullshit that I'm up to.
Cool, brother. I love you, man, and it's always I fucking love doing this. I just want to do this again so I could hang out with you for another hour and a half.
Love you too,
Same.
man. It's been rad talking with you.
Same time, same place next week.
Let's do it.